Welcome back to the 50th anniversary of Aetheral Space.
Feels like it.
All three versions of Dragon will be meeting in an all-new adventure.
Where did this come from? We haven't even met version 2 of Dragon yet.
What do you mean? It's 2071. Aren't you excited for the 50th anniversary?
Do you think I would still be rating Aetheral Space in 50 years?
Do you
I'd
think
already
you'd have a
moved on to
fucking
better
choice?
web serials like Blood Drive.
Look around you. You're in the Aetheral Space harness as you have been for the last 20 years.
It's like Disney, but Aetheral Space Company has taken over the world. Everything belongs to Aetheral Space Enterprise.
Citizen, you have not met your Aetheral Space ratio. Prepare to be incinerated.
Speaking of Disney, have you heard of, like, Golden Oaks?
No, what's that?
The most terrifying thing I've ever heard of. So, you know, like the Disney parks, right? The big Disney,
I've heard
like
of them.
Disneyland, whatever. Golden Oaks is like a really rich person, like creepy suburban neighborhood inside the park.
Huh?
And it was originally like an idea by Walt Disney forever ago when he was alive to like have a neighborhood that he could perfectly control. And they have like all these special rules and weird
Some
shit.
Westworld
And there are
shit.
I know, that's what I was thinking. And there are people that want to live there, and it
I
terrifies
don't want
me.
to live in Walt's kingdom, where his severed head controls my mind.
Is that not like the most dystopian thing you've ever heard? Like a corporate neighborhood?
I have to live according to the whims of the former Walt Disney.
Yes, I'm on Bezos Street. Thank you, Amazon Sama.
Fucking, I would be terrified. Imagine if you look at where you see fucking Mickey walking past.
I also heard a conspiracy theory that the reason they created the movie Frozen was so if you look up Disney Frozen, you won't find about the whole Walt Disney's Frozen head thing.
You're right, it slipped from the public consciousness. No one knows anymore. I like
All right,
how
that's
the
enough talking about
legend
Disney.
isn't just that Walt Disney's frozen, it's that just his head is frozen.
I thought it was just his head.
You know, it's like the myth is very strange. It's not just they froze Walt Disney underneath Disneyland. It's they cut Walt Disney's head off and then froze that.
Well, I think the implication is that all they needed is his brain, his mind. They wanted to exploit it.
Well, I mean, look at the shit they're putting out. It's not been doing much for him.
It's also easier to preserve a brain than you can just stick it on a robot.
You can tell the brain's been decayed. They've been releasing a lot of Marvel movies lately.
Alright, so, anyway, Aetheral Space, how many minutes are we into this? Like, almost 3? Yeah, we need to get
I don't know. I've had
Last time on
interesting
Aetheral... Yeah, I like it too, but I feel bad, because I feel like I detract from this really cool web show you written with all my, like, stupid input. But at the same time, that's just, like, how I operate at this point on this channel, you know?
If you say so.
Anyway, last time, they're on a ship, I forgot the name... Some
Unite
captain
Regent.
guy. Yeah, the what regent?
The Unite Regent.
Yes, and the guy, he talked like this, right?
Captain James Pierrot.
Captain James Pierrot, that's me. Yeah, and he like invited invited quotation marks Skipper and friends on, presumably to complete some asinine task for him for this arc, because God forbid Skipper take even one step towards whatever he was doing before.
Skipper, there are 10 rats in the basement. Please.
The giant rat quest! I need you to get rid of the rats in my inn. It's like moving like a stilted NPC.
RuneScape.
But yeah, I know I'm not saying much about the plot, but really that was kind of the whole last chapter, was just like introing
was zooming out a little
Pierrot and his two friends, whose names I forgot, like his two guys, and they were like talking about a little bit about the world. We learned about the church, that's like the third government aside from the supremacy in the UAP that's like noticeable. We learned a little bit about the interactions, some of the contenders for the supremacy, but like Tan said, it was mostly like a zooming out. There wasn't a lot in terms of pure plot to like go over. So I think we're ready to just jump right in. Yes, no?
Yeah, you're absolutely right.
Alright. Is something wrong, Dragon? Captain Pierrot asked, looking down the dinner table. It's like a mom. You've barely touched your food. Indeed, Dragon had simply been staring down at the roast strand on the plate in front of him. The first strand type food? Deep in thought. He didn't see how anyone could blame him for it. This was an incredibly serious situation. Even if Ruth was shoveling chunks of meat into her mouth with her hands, and Serena was nibbling away like a rabbit at a leaf of lettuce, and that idiot Skipper was cutting away at his steak like this was a fancy restaurant, Dragon at least wouldn't let himself be taken in. "No offense," Dragon said, unsuccessfully trying to conceal his hostility, "but I don't think we're on a first-name basis, Mr. Pierrot, and I'm not hungry." As the others continued eating, either ignoring or not noticing the obvious hostility, Pierrot simply smiled warmly. "Of course, forgive me. I understand this must be a confusing situation for you, being from the Supremacy and all. It's Captain Pierrot, by the way." Dragon didn't blink. "I'm sure it is, and I'm not worried because I'm from the Supremacy, since you were implying that. I was in the Admin Corps. That's hardly part of the military structure." Chuckled Pierrot. "I'm not sure the Supremacy's military structure would agree with you there. Admin Corps is officially part of the military, after all." Dragon narrowed his eyes. "Admin Corps operates on a slot-in basis, like the Special Officers Commission. It can be part of the civilian or military complex as required. When I left, it was part of the civilian sector." "And yet you were dispatched to assist a special officer, who, at the time, was working under the military." "Working with the military. Like I said, they're slot-in, and Musashi was working under the orders—" Oh my god, he was working with Musashi! I forgot about that! Oh no, they used to be allies!
For like 5 minutes.
Itai! Now I understand where Musashi was coming from. And Musashi was working under the orders of a minister, and they're classified... Sorry, this was Dragon talking. And they're classified as civilian. Civilian spelled wrong there, buddy.
That's the Supremacy spelling. No, it's not. It's spelled right.
No, it's not. You're right. Why is it blue-lined then? Why does it say it should be civilians?
Because it's wrong.
With the authority to command military assets if it advances the will of the Supreme? So, Skipper suddenly cut in, laughing as he put his knife and fork down back on his plate. Back down on his plate.
"Ah, what a face! I really appreciate it, pal. You're gonna have to forgive Dragon here. He's going through a moody phase. You know how kids are."
"I'm 19. Oh my god, he's 19! "I'm 19, snarked Dragon, unimpressed. "I don't have moody phases anymore." "Okay, Dragon." "Your whole life is one moody phase," came Ruth's muffled voice as she spoke through a chunk of meat. "Ha ha, you're so funny." Still, Dragon had to admit he was being uncharacteristically talkative, and his hostility was being uncharacteristically open. Normally, if someone pissed him off, he'd let it simmer below the surface until he could take some kind of subtle, petty vengeance. But that wasn't the case here. Excuse me, sorry. He felt the urge to refute every single thing this Captain Pierrot was saying. He couldn't help it. The man just rubbed him the wrong way. It was as if every one of Dragon's cogitant senses was screaming, "Threat! Threat!" in response to even the most innocuous statement or gesture from the old man. Not a physical threat, but someone who could not be trusted under any circumstances. It wasn't hard to figure out why, given the way the conversation seemed to be orbiting Dragon's history with the Supremacy military. Captain Pierrot wanted to get intel out of him. Dragon figured that could happen one of two ways. Either peacefully, through a conversation like this, or less so. If that was the case, it was in his best interest just to tell the captain what he knew, even if it was so very little. But the guy just pissed him off. "There's no need to apologize," Pierrot chuckled infuriatingly, taking a sip of water. "I've raised children myself. I'm quite familiar with the occupational hazards. At any rate, the Supremacy isn't what I'd like to talk about today." "Liar, fool of shit, fuck you."
"Oh?"
Skipper leaned back in his chair.
"And what is it you want to talk about, then?"
Pierrot smiled thinly. "Before we ran across your ship. Before you captured us, you mean? We actually made a brief stop at the planet Talden for refueling purposes. No, if you were refueling, you'd have done so at the Talden light point, not the planet. I understand a potentially cataclysmic situation occurred there, and that you were instrumental in stopping it. Who would have told you that? There wasn't exactly an audience there. I brought you here so I could thank you. Yeah, right. You saved so many lives."
Skipper waved a hand. "Don't worry about it, buddy. It's kind of what I do. But I appreciate the appreciation, yeah?"
Suddenly, Bruno cut in, swapping places with Serena mid-chew. "Is there a reward?" he said seriously, lettuce still sticking out of his mouth. Dragon shot the other boy a glare. "Don't engage with this!" "I'm sure something of that nature can be discussed," Pierrot said calmly, wiping his mouth with a napkin. "But all things in good time, my friend. Your ship is in dire need of refueling itself. I understand you left Talden in a hurry. We'd be happy to provide that service while you enjoy the facilities here on the Regent." It was almost insulting how little Pierrot was bothering to conceal his deceit. The excuse didn't even really make sense. The only flying this ship had done since leaving Talden had been the relatively short trip up to the Reverie. At what point would they have apparently used up all this fuel? Still, Dragon didn't say anything. He just sat there, glaring. He was almost surprised himself with just how irritated this man was making him. "I'll have my aide show you around the ship shortly," Pierrot said, standing up from his seat. "I'm sorry we couldn't talk for longer, but this is a busy vessel. I'll do my best to meet with you again before you leave." And with that, he began walking for the door, and Dragon couldn't hold it any longer. "Pierrot!" he called out harshly, just as the captain was about to leave the room. The old man turned to look at him. "Yes, Dragon?" Skipper was giving Dragon a disapproving glare, telling him to chill out probably, or something just as unhelpful, but the Coadjutant didn't care. He wanted a little honesty here. "What do you want?" Dragon glared. Captain Pierrot seemed to consider the question for a moment, putting a hand to his chin and closing his eyes before answering. "Peace and joy for all mankind," he said truthfully, before striding out of the room. Aw, he's not a bad guy. He's a good guy. Jamie Pierrot hurriedly adjusted his coat as he walked down the hallway, a pair of undermen saluting him as he passed. That had been more taxing than he'd expected. The Coadjutant issue was something he was used to at this point. He'd certainly gotten enough of it over the years, but it had never been to that degree before. Hadrian had clearly been dissecting every word that came out of his mouth. He went to brush his hair back with a hand, only to stop when he remembered it was no longer there. No matter how suspicious Hadrian might have been, there was no way he could have actually deduced the cause, but Pierrot's speech and body language set him on edge, like it did with all Coadjutants. It was an irritating counterweight to the prince's usefulness, but not enough to impact what he needed to do. The prince? Wait, what?
The prince?
What?
What could it mean? What did he mean by this?
He put a subtle finger to his temple, reached out once again for guidance, and then lowered it again. His best course of action was to continue the ship's present course towards the UAP supremacy border. It would also be best to hold Skipper's crew until he'd had a chance to speak with Ambassador Dalcina. In other words, stay the present course. That was the best path forward for all involved. His hands clasped behind his back as he walked, Pierrot reminded himself of the reason he did all this. Peace and joy for all mankind, at whatever cost was due. So is this guy the prince, then?
Well, you mentioned the prince, but the UAP is not sort of like a royalty thing. What could he mean?
The heir, perhaps? "He's so full of shit," muttered Dragon, arms crossed. His foot tapped angrily against the floor. Skipper raised an eyebrow. He was well aware that Dragon Hadrian was an untrusting guy, but this seemed a little overboard. He hadn't even bothered to hide his obvious aggravation as the dinner went on.
"Well, of course he's full of shit," Skipper grinned. "Most people are when you get down to it. Still, he gives good grub, so maybe he's not so bad, yeah?"
Dragon vigorously shook his head. "No," he growled. "No, fuck that!" Ruth leaned forward across the table, obviously concerned. "Are you okay?" she said, reaching a hand forward to take Dragon's temperature, a hand that was expertly dodged. "You're acting kind of weird." "I think he's acting normal," offered Serena, patting her belly as she finally finished her food. "I'm fine," snapped Dragon, moving away from the table.
Ugh,
It's
I
so
hate
much
this
funny
family.
because sometimes I sometimes forget Dragon's 19. He really is basically just like a kid. Moving away from the table and out of Ruth's reach. He's like, I need to get to my fucking Psychology 101 class.
I'm playing cards.
That was dangerous. I almost spit my fucking drink everywhere. Dangerous game, drinking with Tanhony around. It's just, I don't know. That guy just pisses me off, I guess. Something about him. "You don't like bald people, do you, Mr. Dragon?" Serena proposed, smiling sweetly. Ruth put a hand to her mouth and coughed into it, obviously suppressing a laugh. "I don't think that's it, Serena," she smirked. "I don't think Dragon likes anyone." Serena's lip wobbled. "Even us?" She turned to look at Dragon, face-stricken with grief. "You don't like me either, Mr. Dragon?" Dragon glared at Ruth. "Can you not?" Skipper clapped his hands together. "You tell her she's fine, Dragon, right now!" I'm pointing the stun gun at his back. "Say it!" Skipper clapped his hands together, using the tiniest bit of aether to boost the sound of it, creating a noise that easily cut through the burgeoning argument. All three of their heads snapped to look at him. Kids! He chuckled, raising his hands placatingly. "None of you are wrong. Honestly, this situation Fuck you! Fuck you! How much with this chapter? How much?
this situation is kinda sus. So, how about this? We play along for the time being, and the moment things get dicey, we pull off the old Skipper special.
What's that? Ruth cocked her head.
We blow a hole in the wall and leave.
Dragon groaned, pushing his chair back with a squeal as he stood up. Great, he sarcasmed. Great plan. Good luck with it. Yeah, you guys can go wait around for this guided tour or whatever, but I'm going to investigate. Figure out what this guy's game is. Serena quickly swapped over with Bruno, who stood up from his chair as well. I'll go with you, he said hurriedly. We shouldn't be moving around alone on an enemy vessel.
Ah, sighed Skipper as the pair made themselves scarce. The paranoia's contagious around here. Ah, he glanced towards Ruth. Back in my day, people trusted each other, yeah? It's a damn shame.
Ruth had left her chair as well, but hadn't fled from the room. Instead, she was squatting down to peer through the glass display case.
Ruth?
Wait,
Ruth?
the tiniest trace of annoyance slipped into Skipper's voice.
I'm giving out pearls of wisdom here.
Are these what I think they are? Ruth muttered, inspecting a golden hook sword. Skipper looked up.
Oh yeah, I did a sneaky aether ping while we were eating, aimed at that case. Those are definitely aether armaments. Our Captain Pierrot's got quite the collection.
Infusing and altering objects was common practice for aether users. But sometimes an object was so thoroughly transformed by its owner that it retained its unique attributes even after its creator was long gone. Once that was the case, anyone could use the aether armament just by pouring a little of their own aether into it. What would that do? Like, do they have special effects?
Yeah, if like I have a sword and I like change it so like it shoots fire using my aether, and then I get fucking murked.
Okay.
And someone else
and then
gets
you just
my
need to put a
swords.
little bit of. You just need to put
It's
a
just
little
like
bit
starting,
of aether. So you still have to be
an engine.
This is interesting to me because, by the way it's described, you still have to be an aether user, but it doesn't matter how like weak you are. Like even Dragon could use these.
Yeah.
Which makes me think he's going to start loading up. You know what I think might happen? I think it would be cool if Skipper turned his prosthetic arm into an aether armament. You know what I'm saying?
Could be interesting.
If we do need to bust out, Ruth muttered, we could use these, couldn't we? Skipper sighed.
I guess. Listen though, let's not get ahead of ourselves.
Dragon is right, though, even if he's being weird, Ruth said, looking at Skipper over her shoulder. This whole thing is sketchy as hell. They're probably not just going to let us go, right?
Of course they won't, Skipper shrugged. But that's no biggie. We'll break out, he wagged a finger to punctuate his point, when I say it's time to break out. Trust me?
Ruth's smile faltered. Right. The things that had happened back on Talbot, the things Ruth had been told about Skipper's time in Vantablack Squad.
Let me just add that bit. That should have been there.
With the widow and everybody else, they hadn't had time to talk about it, and this certainly wasn't the time either. Still, he couldn't say nothing. Before Skipper could even open his mouth to speak, however, the door slid open, and a young woman with short black hair stepped in. Hello, ready for the tour? She said cheerfully, only to frown once she had a chance to look around the room. Oh, weren't there supposed to be 4 of you? All right, I'm going to popcorn it off to you.
Mess holes, Dragon found, were the same no matter where you went in the universe. A massive room with echoing acoustics designed to irritate, filled with as many uniform rows of tables and benches as it could hold. Watch this. Editing live. This is a better word, I've just decided. But benches. Benches.
This guy! in a mere half a second, he's able to determine the best word
in
possible
barely
for
30
usage.
seconds.
He's on a whole other level.
The babbling of the ship's crew as they ate was a constant undercurrent. Dragon was tempted to clamp his hands over his ears just to shut out the unholy amounts of sound. The food didn't seem to much to speak of either. Processed bars of nutrients and simple flavour, designed for efficiency rather than enjoyment.
Sorry to interrupt, but I just wanted to note, and this isn't like judging you. I don't know if it's just a weird coincidence, but I swear to God, it feels like every single thing I'm reading has like nutrient bars instead of normal food in the setting right now.
It's sort of a military setting in like it's the future as well, so it's inevitable.
But just like every single thing I'm reading has had some form of nutrient bars, and it's very bizarre.
Dragon noticed some crew members crush them up into some kind of porridge, some cut them up into wafer-thin slices, but the result was the same in the end. Not even the finest chef in the galaxy could make this sort of crude matter seem gourmet. A surly current janitor with folds of skin hanging over his mouth like pistachios walked past Dragon and Bruno as they entered, casting an indiscriminate glare at them.
What's a current?
It's Scorantiva, that should have been.
That's what I was thinking, but
Yeah.
you read over it, so I was wondering.
It seemed the cleaning staff were in constant demand here. Where there were people and food, there was mess to be cleaned. Crumbs and snack packets were constantly being sucked up from the floor by janitors and their cleaning automatics, and they were being replaced just as quickly. Dragan looked over the sea of red-dressed undermen, looking for anyone who seemed to stand out. If there was someone who could tell him what was going on around here, it wouldn't be one of the rank and file. "What are you thinking?" Bruno asked, standing next to him. "There." Dragan pointed towards a lone speck of yellow in the crimson crowd and began walking. Bruno quickly followed after him. This person was an outsider like them, that was clear to see. Instead of a uniform, he wore a yellow jacket that looked like it had been pulled out the jaws of a shredder, the tassels hanging from it brushing against the floor as its owner sat and ate. His face was framed by a mass of chaotic red hair that seemed to be trying to escape in every direction. And that face was a sight to behold too, lumpy like it had been stung by a swarm of bees, with a long dark scar running from the man's left temple to the bottom of his jaw. "Fucking fascists!" Dragan heard the man shouting as they approached. He had an accent that sounded like it was from everywhere at once. "Mazma can't believe this. Oh my goodness." The man, Mazma presumably, was sat alone on one side of the table, ranting at a pair of eating undermen on the other side. As he went on, he gesticulated wildly, hands flapping through the air with such speed that he could probably take someone's eye out. "What's going on?" Dragan asked, reaching the table. One of the two undermen, a young man with dreadlocks, looked up from the table. "Oh, don't worry about it," he said long-sufferingly. "This guy's had his ship impounded because of..." "Because?" Mazma interrupted with a jab of his finger. "Because Mazma Mast is a man who believes in freedom, yes. Mazma is a man who sails the kind of cargo he wants to, yes. So what is this? Mazma's ship is locked away? What? Hello?"
This is my new favorite character. I love him. He's so good.
You were
What? Hello?
You were transporting contrabands, the other underman, a gentleman sighed. "And it's not up to us. You can't transport unrefined satellite. It's UAP law." Mazma crossed his arms, shaking his head wildly. "You show Mazma this law," he shouted, "and Mazma will show you how you are a son of a bitch. Okay?" I love him. "You'll have your ship back once you've paid the fine, dude," the first underman sighed, before glancing back up towards Dragan. "Sorry about this. I'm Danny, by the way. Danny Werner. Lucia yet."
More like Danny Weiner.
The other underman offered. "We work in the impound harbour. It's a lot of this, unfortunately." "I am unhappy." Mazma was still going on. "First you take Mazma's ship, his pride and baby. Now you want to take Mazma's money too? Oh my god, demonic person!"
I love him.
Took a seat
Please, I need him to be a main character.
And Bruno followed suit. As Dragan turned back to the two undermen now, he couldn't help but notice the woman, Lucia, staring intently at him. "Can I help you with something?" he asked awkwardly, conveniently ignoring the fact that he had approached them. "Oh," Lucia shook her head. "No, never mind, it's just, you're a cogitant, right? The eyes?" Dragan nodded. "Wow," Lucia grinned despite herself, trading an excited glance with Danny. That's swell. I've never seen a cogitant on this ship before." "Not that rare," muttered Bruno, with strange discomfort bubbling just under the surface. Lucia shrugged. "Just bad luck then, I guess," she chuckled. "You guys are more spread out here in the UAP, and we don't have any serving on the region at the moment." Dragan furrowed his brow. "Really? Why not?" The woman shrugged, discomfort trickling into her body language. I don't know there's a reason," she mumbled. "Like I said, just bad luck, right? Just numbers. Say, is it true that you can look at my fingernails and tell me when my birthday is?" "Of course I can."
I don't think it's bad numbers. I think, based on what we know, this captain doesn't like cogitants around.
Well, maybe they don't like him.
Oh, rip.
She cocked her head. "When is it then?" Mazma, Dragan very suddenly changed the target of his conversational assault. "You said your ship was impounded, right? Taken in? When that happened, did you meet the captain?" Mazma thumped his fist on the table with surprising force, rattling the plate atop it. "No!" he cried, with all the offence his bizarre voice could muster. "No! Mazma demands this. Mazma pleads with such anger to see the captain, but no, they say. Fucking bullshit! Oh my god, I hate this!" She complained. "I see." He'd really doubted it, but this confirmed that Captain Piero didn't personally meet with every unfortunate that he brought aboard. He'd targeted them for a reason then, and were holding them with the intention of gaining something. And was holding them even. What was it then that he wouldn't just ask for it? Information? Was he waiting for someone else to arrive? Someone to take them in for what had happened on Talden? Maybe it was something else entirely. He had no way of knowing after all. Whatever the case, Dragon got the feeling he really wouldn't like it.
I feel so inferior as a writer right now because no matter what I create, I'll never make a character as good as Masma. And all he had was like half a chapter.
King.
Absolute king. Where's my Masma art? I want it now.
Well, I'll popcorn this last bit to you.
Sure thing. Captain Pierrot watched, standing at attention, as Ambassador Dalcina's shuttle docked with the Regent. He was standing in Hangar 19, seemingly accompanied only by Overman Yaza, but he'd made sure more than a few security staff were here, disguised as maintenance techs. With the person he was dealing with, he couldn't be too careful. The shuttle landed in the middle of the hangar, the air pressure from its landing thrusters causing Pierrot's coat to billow behind him like a cape. Heroically, Yaza didn't budge, even as her hair was blowing in her eyes. She didn't even flinch. The craft itself was brutalist in design, little more than a gray box with small legs jutting out, like those of a table to land on. There were no windows either, just tiny black dots that Pierrot knew were viewing cameras, beaming a feed of the outside world into the shuttle's cockpit. As the thrusters died down, a section of the shuttle's hull unfolded, becoming a ramp that thumped against the hangar floor. A second later, the shuttle's occupant walked out. Ambassador Dalcina was in her late 60s, her hair gray and an intricately carved wooden cane supporting her as she walked. For this formal visit, she was wearing traditional Adrestan clothing, a black dress that brushed against the floor, with a white wooden shawl draped over her shoulders. Her face was kindly, soft, but Pierrot could see the true sharp edges lying behind it, a dagger that looked like a cushion. She smiled genially at Pierrot as she descended. "Good evening, Ambassador," Pierrot smiled back, taking Dalcina's hands in his own as she reached the bottom of the ramp. "Good evening," he thought. "Widow." Bum, bum, bum. Widow was the guy with Skipper, right?
Not the guy.
Or gal, yeah. What was her
She was
shtick
like
again?
she was like Skipper's skipper.
Oh shit! And now Drustin, is that the church or what is that?
Has been mentioned. That's where the wine that the sponsor of War was drinking just before he got fucking wrecked came from.
Oh, and she's an ambassador of the UAP now.
For this specific planet in the UAP.
Interesting. So Widow's alive? I thought Skipper thought she was dead.
You never said that.
Okay, so she's not dead. So what was that whole thing he mentioned? Like, because he was all nervous about that earlier this chapter. He was like about Widow.
Well, because like they were all part of the, sort of the shady Vantablack squad. And when Ruth got told about that, she was like, "What the fuck?"
I see. Alright, well, this has been a chapter, and I enjoyed it thoroughly. There was a lot of humor. There were a couple of lines I feel like Tan put in just to trip me up, like Skipper saying sus, and Dragon acting like a child, which were funny. Good chapter.
Nice, that was
I'm
one
trying to
nice
think
one.
of a
So the
question.
story's now really begun.
Yeah, that's true. Alright, here's my question. Do you want Masma to become a main character, and why? Because he should. And if he doesn't, I don't know if I can keep reading Aetheral Space, knowing what we're missing out on. So good.
Right,
Alright, well, thanks for watching, guys. Take care of yourselves. Bye.
Oh, you got a question?
Oh, that was my question.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, do you want me to ask you a question?
No,
Does that make you feel better?
No, it's fine. I just took my mind.
No, it's okay if it'll make you feel better.
Gosh.
Alright, lore question, let me think. Oh yeah, what's an underman? I figure it's like general crew members.
Yeah,
Am I
sort of
right
like
in that regard?
The rank and file are underman, command staff are overman.
And is that like the term used everywhere, or is that like specifically a UAP thing?
That's a Unite Fleet thing, yeah.
Okay, cool. Alright, there. Satisfied?
Yeah.
Alright. Thanks for watching / reading. Bye!